Welcome back to Learn Astrology with Mary. My name's Mary English. You can find me at www.maryenglish.com, maryenglish.co.uk and UK Astrologer. Hello, I hope you're well. I hope your new year has kicked in really well. Now, traditionally, this time of year, the beginning of any year, is inverted commas normal time for astrologers to be busy because people always want to know how the new year is going to unfold for them. But it's funny, I've found that I've been in the astrology world for so long that I don't really think of the new year as any different to just before the new year, because the planets don't move in the same way as our calendar does. They do their own thing and whatever. What I'm waiting for astrologically is, and I'm not waiting for it because that's, if you wait for things, life passes you by. I'm curious about what's going to happen when the planets change signs. So when Neptune goes into Aries and Saturn goes into Aries and Uranus goes into the sign of Gemini. And that's all going to happen this year. And things are going to be really, really different. Anyway, I'm not going to be talking about this year's planets because not all of you listen exactly when I broadcast, so there's not much point. And I just want to also reassure you that when I said we're going to have teaching episodes, we are, and I have my first guest booked in, and that'll be in a few weeks' time. I think realistically I'll only be able to do one a month because it takes an amount of time to contact someone, for them to check their calendar, to be able to find a date. And because I do the podcast every week, I'm not overrun with people that are asking or contacting me and wanting to be included in teaching things, because it's a much longer episode and that poor astrologer who's going to come and share their time with us isn't going to be paid. I don't pay any of my guests. I don't pay myself to do this. I don't get paid to do the podcast. It costs me money to run it. But I do it for the sheer love of astrology, and I like communicating with you wherever you are. So this week I'm going to return to a subject that I've talked about before. We're going to go into a little bit more detail. We've got two charts that we're going to go through, and I'm going to quote extensively, with big apologies to Karen Hamaker-Zondag. I'm going to be quoting from her lovely book, The 12th House, The Hidden Power in the Horoscope, and I'll put a link to the book itself on the show notes. Now, I'll read you the back cover of a book, because the back cover of a book should contain a succinct amount of blurb to give you an idea of what the book is all about. You know, it's like when you're stood in a bookshop and you picked a book up and you don't know what the book's about other than the cover and the title of it and blah, blah, blah. And this book was given to me by one of my younger sisters, which was very kind of her. So it says, The 12th House, the mysterious and misunderstood 12th house, is the subject of this book. Called the House of Self-Undoing by old astrologers, this house has signified sorrow, misfortune, illness, imprisonment, and secret enmity. It does, however, mean much more than that. Karen Hamaker-Zondag considers this house from the perspective of a Jungian psychologist and shows the creative potential that can be tapped here if we choose to cooperate with it. The 12th house symbolises the collective unconscious and non-rational ways of perception, such as working with dreams. The effects of planets in the 12th house and how to work with them, the way in which the house reveals parental ancestral inheritance, the working of fate and unconscious processes are all discussed in detail. The book offers a clear and intriguing interpretation of this difficult to understand house and will be of value to students at all levels, particularly those who want to combine psychological theory with astrological symbolism. Now, I absolutely love this book, and I can 100% guarantee you that what I've just written written, no, I haven't written it, what I've just read out to you is exactly what this book is about. Now, obviously for copyright reasons, I can't read tons of it to you. I can summarise some of it and I can quote little bits. But due to copyright law, for me to read the whole book out to you, which absolutely I would love to do because it's such a good book, it's totally unfair to Karen. You've got to go and get your own copy. Now, so it's about the 12th house, and as it says there, it's the house of undoing, etc. But she perceives the 12th house, in a different way. And she talks about it being the house of the collective unconscious. Now, anybody who's interested in hypnotherapy, me, hands up, or the workings of the mind, me, will really want to know and understand how someone, if they've got planets in the 12th, how they're going to tackle them. And I believe that people with planets in the 12th do have access to the collective unconscious, and I'm in complete agreement with Karen about that point. So I'm on page 29 now, and I think I'm in the second chapter. And she says, in short, the 12th house represents our connection with the collective unconscious, by means of which we are linked with everything and everybody in a dimension outside of time and space. Yet within the collective unconscious, it is the unconscious of our parents to which we react most. We participate in the world via their unconscious. But if we're not to endanger the growth of our conscious minds and of our egos, brackets, and therefore that of our personalities, close brackets, we must break free from this, brackets, unconscious tie, at least to a great extent. However, as I have already said, the cutting of the psychic umbilical cord means that we are largely shut off from our collective origin and from nature in ourselves. On the other hand, if the cord is not severed, then we remain all our life long, closely connected with everything and everybody. Our connection with the collective unconscious can reveal itself in countless different ways. But it's important to bear one thing in mind, and that is that the forms in which it reveals itself certainly need not be negative, as we will see by and by. So she says that what she's talking about, collective unconscious connection to it, it isn't black and white. So when we come to the 12th house, we have to also consider things from a Pisces perspective. You try getting clarity for Pisces. Excuse me, I'm born as a Pisces. I know all about how unclear a Pisces is. Okay, as I'm always saying, I'm a reformed Pisces, so hopefully I don't drive too many people crazy anymore. So we've got two charts today, and we got the charts of Emmanuel Macron and his wife Brigitte Macron, and I can't remember what her maiden name was, but they're married now. And we'll come on to their charts in a minute. But what I want to do is just to expand a bit on the points that she makes in the book, because I've highlighted, not obviously with a pen because that'd ruin my book. Now she talks here, so I've now gone to page 35, and she's talking about the collective unconscious, how planets in the 12th represent that, how the 12th house represents that. So she's talking about how the parents, mother mostly, will affect the child when it's young. But if you think about anybody that's going to be a carer for any new being that's just come into the world, so regardless of his mother or stepmother or whoever, is going to have an awful lot of influence on the child. And she talks about the 12th. She talks about the 12th house and the planets are in it, and she also talks about planets in the 12th or in aspect to the ruler of the 12th that are undesirable, yeah? So it's not just the planets that are in there, but the ruler of the 12th house, where is it located, what sign is it in, and what aspects does it have, to be able to determine whether or not somebody's got an inverted commas issue with their 12th house. And she talks about the parents and when you're growing up, the influence that they have upon you, but also the grandparents can as well, which I thought was, so that's what she mentions, page 35. And then she goes on, we're on page 41 now, she talks about creativity. So the connection with the unseen world is exceptionally strong in the 12th house. For convenience sake, I'll lump under the heading unseen world all those things we cannot rationalise or often explain, but which can nevertheless play an important part in our lives. Just to dip into the subject here and there, we can offer as examples religious emotions, cosmic consciousness, extrasensory perception, working with, brackets still, unexplained energies and psychic powers, dreams, hypnotism, meditation, symbolism, the world of myths, legends and fairy tales, creative imagination, etc., etc., etc. These things all come under the 12th house, and planets in the 12th and in aspect to the ruler of the 12th seem to be outstanding instruments for them. This brings us to the very creative side of the 12th house. It hands us the means, at first no more than a latent possibility, of adding another dimension to our lives. Then even in times of adversity, we can find the help and support either from within or from without required in order to survive. So I like the way that she's saying it's not the end of the world to have planets in the 12th. I've got a planet now, I've got Uranus. And I think it's probably why my sister bought it for me. It's like, go and sort Uranus in the 12th house, Mary, which I have, thank you much. But yes, so the other thing she says is the line of demarcation, on page 69 now, the line of demarcation between dream and reality is less clear in the 12th house than it is in other houses. It's as if the archetypical ideas that dwell in us more easily come to the surface here. Inner archetypical images place an enormous force at our disposal, and they can be seen by the way they inspire artists, scientists and others. The creative power of the unconscious. And she's got a whole chapter on that. So what I especially like about this book is how she's offering, inverted commas, hope to people that have planets in the 12th. And be wary of all those things that you read is the end of the world and this and that and the other's going to happen. And I think I did a podcast a while back where I might have mentioned about Saturn being in the 12th, and that was when I got a bit sort of further converted to astrology, because my son was born with Saturn in the 12th and his father wasn't around in the family home when he was growing up, only for a little while, because then he ran off, this is his father, ran off with somebody else. And so then the question you have to ask, and she asks this in the book as well, are the things predetermined before the child is born, or is when they're born their life mapped out completely for them? And if so, what control do we have over being able to change it? And is life still inherent? Well, yes, it is, because even if you were born with a certain planet in a certain house, doesn't mean to say that your life is totally defined by that. But I love the idea about the 12th house being a super creative house. And I was going to give some examples of writers and all the rest of it. I thought, no, actually, I'm not. So we're going to be using Emmanuel Macron, who was born the 21st of December 1997, and his Mrs. Brigitte Macron. And as you know, I think it's something like 24 years difference between their ages. But it doesn't seem to have affected their relationship at all. He lives with her. She's got some kids from a previous relationship. I mean, who knows how long the marriage is going to last. But I wanted to look at the charts, keeping in mind that planets in the 12th, there's meanings for those, which I'll read for each of these people. He's got the Sun and Mercury retrograde in the 12th. Now, she writes a lot about the Sun being in the 12th, and it represents the relationship with the father. And that if you have the Moon in the 12th, which is what my mother had and one of my brothers had, both of them are now in heaven. And now this is true with people with moon in the 12th. She talks about them as being so emotionally connected to the unconscious, to the divine, to everything that's going on out there, to that unconscious, the collective unconscious, that they will want to devote their lives in some way to the oppression of others, and they're so emotionally connected, etc., etc., etc. They'll watch a film and they'll cry their eyes out, but when they themselves have cause for grief or whatever, they don't. And I remember at my father's funeral, my mother didn't shed a tear. I probably think she was in shock and stuff, and something dreadful happened with my brother, and he also, well, he was dying actually, he also didn't cry. So people with moon in the 12th can hold their emotions in, and until I don't think my mother ever had any counselling, and I doubt my brother did either. But when you have some sort of psychotherapy or counselling or whatever, and you can understand your emotional self a bit more and be kinder to it, and that so that you're not always emotional about everybody else, then you can take the power back for your moon, and you're not going to sort of cry randomly at other things. You're going to be able to feel your own emotions rather than the whole world's emotions. So that's moon in the 12th. When she talks about sun in the 12th, she says that young children have had fathers who have played no more than a minor role in their lives, especially during all or most of their early years. And now she did a lot of 12th house workshops. This is Karen now, and she says the causes are multifarious, although seldom suggesting a lack of good intentions on the part of the parents. Many of these causes have come to light during consultations and workshops on the 12th house. Thus, the father may have died just before the birth or during the first few years of the child life, or the parents may have separated during this period. In either event, the child not only misses the father's influence, but through the symbiotic link with the mother, probably shares in her experience of the problems of the situation, in particular her efforts to cope with the loss of her husband through death or divorce. The child experiences the problem caused by the male. So I'm not saying this is going to happen to everybody, but in Macron's case, he's the son of Francois Macron, née Nogies, a physician. Why would there be a née? Née means your previous married. No, but anyway, Francois Macron, that must be his mother, that's right, a physician, and Jean-Michel Macron, professor of neurology at the University of Picardy. Sorry, I read that wrong. The couple divorced in 2010. So he's born 21st of December 77, then eventually his parents end up divorcing. Although raised in a non-religious family, he was baptised a Catholic. He didn't perform national service, blah-de-blah. But his parents eventually divorced. So his dad was a neurologist and his mother was a physician. So they would have been out of work all the time. Those are long hours that people work. So did he feel that? Did he feel like his dad wasn't there? Now, don't forget, Saturn also represents that. But she's saying that in some cases, the sun can represent the, inverted commas, absent father. So we'll come to Saturn in a minute, but this episode's not specifically about that planet. We're going to be covering the Sun, Mercury, and Macron's missus. I think she's got Pluto. She's got Pluto. So he's got the Sun and Mercury retrograde in the 12th, and he, Macron, and then his missus has got Pluto in the 12th. Now she goes on to say, on the other hand, I've encountered situations in which the placement of the sun in the 12th looks rather odd, because both parents did a lot for their children, were genuinely happy with them and with each other. Quite often it's transpired that around the time the child was born, one of these parents was having a problem with his or her own father, either going through an internal struggle over him or actively quarrelling with him. Or one of the parents may have passed through a more or less serious identity crisis at that time. I mean, I've got no way of knowing if that's what went on for Macron, but yeah. So then she goes on about Saturn in the 12th, or an aspect to the ruler of the 12th, and the charts of children whose fathers were absent or hardly ever present. Let's say that was the case in my son's case. But his dad wasn't absent. He was sort of physically not there, obviously, because he got another woman. But he did take an interest in our son, and he did visit regularly, and he kept contact. So even though he wasn't physically in the family home, the contact wasn't lost. Losing contact with one or other of your parents is dreadful. I've worked with numbers of clients out there. It's not fun. So that's Macron's sun in the 12th. Now I'm going to quote about Mercury being in the 12th. So this is, we're now on page 144. So now she's using a chart example of a chap called Gerard Croiset, who was born on the 10th of March 1909. I'm not too sure what he did for a living, this chappie. I think he was, he was one of Netherlands' most renowned psychics, is the late Gerard Croiset, a gifted clairvoyant. Now, he had Mercury in the 12th, and she says, as we know from earlier chapters, various matters can be represented by the 12th. The situation attending the birth, the experiences of the child in its mythic phase, possible problems and repressions of the parents and or hidden gifts and talents, and all these can be connected with specific family problems. We must remember these points when interpreting each 12th house factor. Mercury is the planet of contact and communication, of writing, talking, thinking, analysing and connecting, to name but a few of the things it governs. In some people with Mercury in the 12th, or in aspect to the ruler of the 12th, there seems to have been problems with contacts in the earliest stage of life. For example, one or both parents may fail to respond to the signals from the young child, or may give it insufficient attention. The parent or parents may never or hardly ever talk to it, giving it too little mental stimulus, or leaving it alone for long periods in a situation where there's not enough going on. The same applies to the toddler, who is also liable to get too little contact or verbal stimulus. And then she talks about Croiset. His father sort of did some things and whatever. So she says, in addition, I've often seen Mercury in the 12th have a very different effect in families when the child did receive a lot of attention. What happens then is the child gives very unclear signals, or in general none at all, so that it's not understood or heard what it should be heard. In that case, even when the parents have the best intentions, the child can feel misunderstood and insecure. I can think of a baby that would lie quietly without uttering a sound and looking contented, even though it was wearing a dirty diaper, which must have been especially irritating because it was already suffering from nappy rash. The parents simply did not know that the baby's diapers needed changing, and when it did not, when it did not. I've encountered this position too in the charts for children, where one of the parents has academic leanings but never had the chance to satisfy them, or had shown promise as a writer but had never developed a talent. But be that as it may, the placement is one in which open and direct communication becomes a weak point. On the other hand, it can help the native to follow other types of communication and to learn to react to unconscious communication. Therefore, this placement can contribute to paranormal abilities, even though the individual may be disinclined to develop them initially. The uncertainties surrounding communication, contacts and thinking that the young person with Mercury in the 12th usually experiences can find expression in continual craving for attention and in bothering other people with questions and remarks. So Emmanuel's got 2 planets in the 12th. I don't know if he was abandoned verbally as a child. I've got absolutely no way of finding out. Now Brigitte has Pluto in Leo retrograde in the 12th, and Pluto's about deep change and transformation, and Leo is a nice sort of shiny sign, but it's a really big power thing. It's sort of like Emperor of China type of energy. I always think it's Pluto in Leo, and to have that hidden in the 12th, one would hope that the Pluto doesn't every now and again boil over and do the thing. There is a clip of Macron coming off a plane or something, and I think his missus is yelling at him, and she pulls him out of the way, or he pulls her out of the way or something, I don't know. And apparently she was his teacher as well. And I thought, how did they even get together? Well, their ascendants are so compatible. He's got a 28-degree Capricorn ascendant, and she's got a 4-degree Virgo ascendant, so they both got earth sign ascendants. That would have been the initial attraction. And their sun signs are compatible. They're both fire signs. I think the difficulty arises he's got moon in Taurus, so he's going to like his dinners a bit more, while she's got sun, moon and Venus in Aries, but her Mercury is in Pisces. So it's quite a complex combo between the two of them. And they both got 12 house planets, so one hopes they've had a teeny bit of counselling here and there. And with him having his sun in the 12th and her having her sun in the 8th, those are very similar houses. 8th is, the things we hide from everybody. 12th is what we hide from everybody, and the 8th is the house of secrets. So those are water houses anyway. The other water house is the 4th house. So they've got similar ways of doing things. So you never want to pry with somebody with planets in the 8th. You just don't go there. Don't ask them millions of questions they're not going to answer. And then somebody with the Sun and Mercury in the 12th, and the dreams are really important. What Karen goes on to expand about in this book is how to deal with the planets you've got there by doing journaling and astro drama, etc. How to sort of allow your planets that are in the 12th to be able to express themselves in a healthy way, so they don't become an issue for you, because it's unconscious. What you've got in the 12th, you're not consciously doing that. And if you want to learn a bit more about conscious and unconscious, there's a little clip on my website, maryanglish.com. If you go to the tab for hypnotherapy, there's a teeny weeny little track on there. It's only about a few minutes long, but it explains a little bit about what hypnosis is, because in a state of hypnosis we go into this unconscious state, and if you think your sun is who you are, like shiny, and then it's hidden in the 12th, are you going to totally understand who you are as a person if you're not having some way of reflecting that back to self, equally with him having the Mercury located there? I won't go through all the planets that are in the 12th. I've only used these two examples. She doesn't do a cookbook version of planets in the 12th. This planet means this planet means that. She's not covering that. She's covering about what the 12th house is and how to resolve it. She doesn't have planets in the 12th herself anyway, so she's got no personal experience of it. I think she gave birth to a Pisces child. I haven't done the chart of her childhood. She talks about what's in her 12th house for a child. But it's nice how she's used the therapy that she's done with her clients and how they've, inverted commas, managed to resolve their 12th house issues. And also, if you understand, like in Brigitte's case, she's got Pluto there. If you feel that you're being disempowered by someone, don't go and bop them on the nose. Where can you empower yourself? Because Pluto is the power planet, and we're talking power with a capital P here. So if you ever, when you like trying to learn the planets and stuff, Pluto is power. It's not necessarily in your face power. This is like on your ascendant. But it's when it's hidden in the 12th, the person's biggest fear is to be disempowered, yeah. Because you also have to think about the 12th house is also, and she talks about this book, it's the house of fear. What is it that we fear the most, yeah? Because the thing that we fear the most is 9 times out of 10 the thing that's going to manifest for us. I'm really worried about blah, 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 blah. And then if we worry about it so much that all we're doing is sending messages out to the universe that you're worried about something rather than what you want. So if you've got a planet in the 12th, then ping me over an email, mary@maryanglish.co.uk, and we'll talk a little bit more about how it's manifested for you. And I think also the other thing that I find so lovely about astrology is that when you're picking someone's chart apart, obviously not in front of them, but you're doing it in your mind, or you're working on a chart, you're working on your own chart, you're trying to understand the person that is different from you. If you're doing somebody else's chart, how are they seeing the world? And unless you're working with twins all the time, you come to the swiftest realization when you first start learning astrology, and this is what happens to my students as well. Oh my goodness, I am different from this person. I am different to my parents. I am different to my child. I am different to my siblings even. We've got the same parents, but we're totally different. Why is that? Because you've got a different chart. You've got a different ascendant. You've got a different moon. And so if you've got planets in the 12th, have you managed to allow them means of expression? Do you allow them to have, are they allowed to out of the basket occasionally without it being unconscious? So we have to be aware of the 12th is what is unconscious, not conscious. And unconscious doesn't mean bad either, as she says in here. The people with planets in the 12th, and there's lots of people with lots of planets in the 12th, that they can more tap into the collective unconscious. And she talks about, there's an example in there that she gives about somebody who'd got bundles of planets in the 12th, and they just intuitively knew that some product that they were going to be promoting, they just knew, had a sixth sense about it, was going to be really, the next big thing. And then they managed to produce this just as the sort of the collective unconscious wanted this as a product. So this person was caught on the wave of what's it called, sort of like viral trends, when something that somebody's written goes viral, or they have a product and it goes viral. That's because whoever it's produced it has managed to tap into the unconscious, not the conscious thing. And the internet, unfortunately, and your mobile phone and everything else connected with it, has been created to tap into the deeper feelings that we've got. It's a form of hypnosis, trust me. Mobile phones are a form of hypnosis. Anything that's been created to be flogged to you is a way to get in control of your mind. So that's adverts, especially adverts, the way that they're created to make you suddenly want something. You want to have something that you never even thought you existed. It's like, oh, I've got to have this thing now. And that's not a conscious thing. No one the only time people should shop consciously are the ones that write shopping lists and then go and put everything in the trolley and nothing other than what's on the list in the trolley. I worked in retailing for a long time before I did this job. So unconscious, okay, 12th house, it's not a bad thing. It can be used as a positive thing. It can be tapping into what is going on outside of you and with others, and so that allows you a little bit of insight into how they might be reacting. But remembering, of course, that it's not a conscious house, so it takes time and space and just relaxing into it and allowing the voice of your 12th house to come through. So do get the book. I really, really recommend it. The 12th House, The Hidden Power of the Horoscope by Karen Hammaker Zondag. So I'll be back next week. I hope you have a fab week, and bye-bye now.